Hi everyone, and welcome to round 8 of the Oxted All Play All. Sorry for the lack of videos and a bit of a break. I've been job hunting and also playing some more chess, so there's some more videos hopefully coming out after this series. And yeah, doing my own studying as well. And getting into this game itself, I'm now black against Joseph. I played him in the previous round, I can't remember which one. But we've already played before, and unfortunately I was very winning in that position, and it ended up being a draw. So hopefully this time I'm out for revenge. He plays d4. As we know, I normally play knight f6, but I've been recently playing d5 against d4. However, this is the exception because I actually knew that my opponent would play the London system, I think. I don't know why else I wouldn't have played d5. This has been a while since I played these games. So I played knight f6, and he did play bishop f4, so my preparation clearly paid off. So when I'm playing against d4 and I want to play d5, the London isn't my strongest suit yet, so I'm sticking to f6, knight f6 for the meantime. And after a few moves, we enter into a Queen's Indian setup. Now, the reason why I've highlighted the moves here on move 3 is that a typical London setup would have e3, perhaps c3. c4 isn't really London anymore, but white's still being flexible and being able to play this, and this knight tends to go to d2. Now, my opponent plays knight c3, and we see that this is actually a slight issue after bishop b7 and e3. Really, white wants to be pushing their pawns, and against the Queen's Indian, and a very typical idea is to have a pawn on c4 and then push to d5, and then this is how you're going to go for your attack. And this happens in a lot of d4 openings, is that you want your c pawn to be able to move to c4 if you're white, or c5 if you're black. And my opponent sort of blocked it. There are exceptions, obviously, like Jababa London is a great opening, but this sort of move order hasn't done white any favours, and we can already take advantage of this. And the way to take advantage of this is to play bishop b4, with the idea that this knight is now actually sort of misplaced, and you're questioning why did they put it there. And it's already starting to reach equality, if not maybe even better for black, even this early on move 5. He decided to play bishop d3. There are some arrows in this game and highlights, because unfortunately I recorded this video before, and then my computer told me that I'd completely filled up on storage, so I had to go through a load of stuff on my computer and delete a lot of stuff. So forgive the occasional random arrows, but I will try and explain them as we go through, because I already have. Now I play knight d5, and this is the whole point of playing bishop g4. Is now that we're just going to start piling up against this knight, and you might be a bit cautious about playing this if you've not seen it before and knew that this was a nice idea, because it looks like we're just sort of giving up on our development. This knight hasn't moved yet, we've not castled, whereas white has a lot of stuff going for them. And ultimately that's how white should play, because I'm already threatening to win a pawn here. Oops, that's not how you draw arrows. And white should just sort of accept it and castle and say, okay, you can take my pawn, but I'm just going to rush you with all my development. This is still better for black, and yes, ultimately it's because it's a pawn, but there's more practical chances because at least you are better developed. Unfortunately for my opponent, he played in the game as queen d2. And now perhaps pause your video for the first time and come up with a nice idea that's going to leave white with the same materials, so I'm not winning a pawn anymore, but black is clearly going to have a nicer position than white is, and is going to have a nicer game because of it. So the nice idea here is the second reason why the knight's on d5 is also to threaten the bishop, and if the bishop's taken, we've also opened up this diagonal, so once the knight is taken back and the bishop can take on f3, have to take back, we can notice now that white has these triple pawns, and these are going to be a very juicy target for us in this game, and what we're going to be going after. So yeah, this was quite nice. Another idea that you could also have played here was taking the bishop first, with the idea that you're going to give black so many double pawns. The computer actually doesn't prefer this, because now at least white has some more central ideas. But it's still obviously much better for black. So yeah, this is the position that I went for. I developed just attacking the pawn in the centre. He moves his bishop, which helps defend because the queen is now X-ray, or was X-raying, the pawn has now been opened up. I developed my queen, attacking the two weaknesses that he has here, and here we're going to start seeing how hard it is to protect these pawns, and really they are just lost. He decided to take on c6. I'm okay with this. I took back with my king, with my pawn. He now moved his queen, and if his queen's job is to defend 4 really awkwardly placed pawns, that's okay with me. That just means that my queen is now able to not only put pressure on these pawns, but also do other stuff, and I can just develop. So I decide to castle, putting more pressure on his weaknesses. He has to castle to defend in kind. Now, there are a few ideas that you could go here. The most accurate one is not the one that I played in the game, unfortunately, and it's quite a nice one to see. So I'm just going to show it on the board here. The idea is that you take here with your bishop. If queen takes, then you get to take here with check. If the pawn takes, then the idea is to play rook d5, and is not to go after the d4 pawn or double up, although this seems like a reasonable idea, and I'm sure this could probably be played. But a really nice idea here as well, and this is more from an understanding point of view, is that weaknesses, especially pawn weaknesses, are best attacked when using heavy pieces. So by trading off the last minor pieces, this rook is just going to come here, and how is white going to be able to defend f4? Perhaps if they go here, we can then bring the pawn. If you try to defend, I can then play h5. You can play here, and this is just going to start going, oh, you can't even play here because that's hanging the rook, so we won't do that. But it's just getting very ugly, and in the future, this is an idea that I want to be more associated with. I do know that heavy pieces are good against pawn weaknesses, but perhaps in this position, knowing that, then using that idea to then give a reason why trading on c3 was a good idea. Instead, I play c5, which is also completely fine, still winning for black, but not as much. He decides to take. I take with the bishop, attacking the queen, also attacking the pawn. He then moves his queen. So first, I've sort of given it away by just scrolling a bit too far there. But can you take the pawn here on c2? And if not, or if yes, why? So don't take the pawn on c2. If you take the pawn on c2, the reason why I've sort of given it away and why I played king b2 in the last move is that this would actually lead to a checkmate. Notice that the rook covers this square, and that'd be a really horrible way to lose the game. So just nice prophylaxis, moving the king out of the way. Now he decides to move his knight back. It's quite hard to suggest an idea for white because I am threatening to play rook d7, and then if rook d7 comes in, this other rook's going to come here. I can come after this pawn, this pawn. These are all coming for check when I take on f4 because of the king being aligned, and this is quite horrible. So perhaps knight e2 is quite a reasonable idea. I decide to take the pawn. He's got no counterplay going on at the moment, so I might as well. Also in this position, you could try and defend the pawn like this, but again, this move's just going to come. This is going to be quite brutal for white. So the pawn's basically lost, hence why it's a really big weakness and liability. Take the pawn. He then attacks my bishop. I then move my bishop back. Now this is another misunderstanding from me. I know that I can move my bishop back here straight away, but I thought that by moving my bishop to e4, I'm not really going after the b2 pawn because I saw that he could defend this as quite straightforward. But what I thought after moving my bishop again is this pawn pushing would actually be a liability, and then I could perhaps maybe infiltrate a bit easier on the second row, and the king would be unsafe. This is actually a bad assessment because after c3 and bishop c4, he now gets to put in b4, and if we now compare that to the position where if I played bishop c5 immediately, if he plays c3, which is the best move for him still, notice how my bishop isn't being attacked and I don't have an additional tempo against me, and I can just start building my pieces now, and this is great for black. So slight inaccuracy on my part, but it's still fine for black, and I can go after this pawn. He brings his knight back in now that this rook isn't really a threat anymore. He's also threatening a fork, so I decide to take with check. He has to move. I didn't consider his king moving. I only considered queen takes in this position, which is much better for white, and white should be winning because these pawns come really quickly. And what I didn't I failed to understand is that after taking the queen and the pawn takes, this pawn is actually going to become quite annoying. It's not just yet, but it can easily become annoying, and which sounds weird, but from a practical standpoint, I have to find a lot more accurate moves in the future to be able to push my advantage, and this could have been avoided if I kept the queens on the board. Done something else. I then play rook d7, just avoiding any ideas with the checks on c6 and also protecting the f7 pawn from this rook up here. Now, again, why this pawn's going to pick up a problem is that if we look at the pawn structure here, I'm up 2 pawns, so I should hopefully be winning, and the only reason why I wouldn't be able to win is if his 2 pawns could somehow hold my 4, because this 3 on 3 isn't really going to be doing much most of the time. So this 4 and 2 is my advantage, so these 4 need to overpower this 2. And we can imagine if this pawn manages to get to e5, it's actually going to be quite annoying, because then this pawn is holding back 2 pawns, and this pawn might be able to hold back these 2 pawns too. And although it might still be better for black, or even winning for black, it's going to be a lot harder to play. So he plays knight c6, I move my king up, he defends. I play a6, which is fine, but from a human standpoint, not the greatest idea. And I wasn't punished for it, luckily, because after a4, I don't want to be the one taking, because if I'm the one taking, this rook comes in, and we can imagine that black's getting checkmated quite easily. And you have to be accurate here as black to stay afloat, let alone be better. And you can easily be worse. Luckily I wasn't punished. My opponent played c4. Now this is, for the same sort of reason that we just saw a second ago, also a blunder, but from his part. And clearly both me and him were unaware of this idea in this position, was that this a-file opening up for either side could be really good. So the idea is simply just to take, and then eventually I'm going to play rook a8. Sorry, my voice is going from talking so much. Rook a8. And then I'm going to be the one using the file, and this is better for black. And this is what I should have gone for, but instead I decided to close the position down. It's still better for black, it's just that that might have been a nicer way to go forward. And perhaps probably the first sort of just, it's not a major mistake compared to the other mistakes, but it just shows that the lack of understanding. And I've had so many moves up to this point, there's 4 or 5 moves here that I could have played to stop e5 as an idea to shut down, and I'm still allowing it, and I'm defending this pawn to be able to push it, but this pawn can't be pushed if he plays e5, and this is now going to become a bit more difficult for black to play. Still winning, but just conceptually it's just harder. And again, I'm going to be a bit more accurate to find good moves. I decided to trade rooks, which is the right idea, and then I push. And I was really frustrated in this position because, perhaps pause the video here, and then you are up 2 pawns. This is winning for black. This is currently -2, reflecting the 2 pawns. But annoyingly, that means it's -2, meaning you're just up 2 pawns, whereas the position isn't dominating, and it's not giving you more points for being only up that much material. Perhaps come up with an idea how you're going to push that advantage here. So the main way to get the advantage here is actually to not focus on these pawns here and just accept that this is holding them back, and just go for g5 and h5. And after, it'll take a while to convert, but eventually it'll just show that black really doesn't have much to do. And as long as this rook stays on the back rank, there is no back rank threats for mate, and black can go on to win this game. I decided to play f6, and what I calculated in the game, I saw the line that white should play, which is knight d8 check, attacking this pawn as well, and if you come this way, then suddenly this starts becoming ugly, and this pawn would be dropping, and if I try and protect the pawn and this comes, and this might even start being better for white, computer's giving rook e8, it's now actually better for white, this pawn is probably going to become a problem. This is now also a threat that I'm just seeing, and this is becoming quite ugly. So it's not that I didn't calculate this. I could calculate this all. I just misevaluated this position, and I thought, okay, sure, he's getting some of my pawns back, but I couldn't see the better idea. And to me, playing G4 or G5 even, and H5, H4, G4 just couldn't come to my mind, and that's poor play on my part because it was the main winning idea, and I was lucky in this position that he didn't actually go for knight d8 immediately, and he actually played rook e7. At any point in those last few moves, he could have played knight d8 with the same idea, and it would have also worked out for him. So I was quite lucky in this position, and now I'm in two-pass pawn mode, and this is back to winning for black. So it just a failure of my part of the endgame, and it was quite frustrating at the time playing it. And I knew that knight d8 was going to cause some problems, and coming back and looking over it, it just seems absurd why I played the moves that I played, but hey-ho, it's in the moment. I start pushing my pawns. Pass pawns are meant to be pushed. He brings his king up. I bring my bishop back, which is nicely defending this pawn, so there's no issues here. I'm also blocking his rook coming back from this file, so I thought this was a nice idea. He decides to take the pawn. I was okay with this. He can have this pawn. If he's spending time taking the pawns, then it means that my pawns are pushing, and this pawn's going to take forever to queen. He brings his rook back. I decide to bring my king across because this is how I want to push the position. I want to get my king into the game. I also want to make it so that my rook doesn't have to keep defending the back rank, so that this rook g8 idea with checkmate isn't a threat, and just makes sense to have your king in there as well. I push to check, he moves back. Start bringing my king up. This is completely fine. This is now starting to become very winning for black. This is quite nice. It's -6 already, despite only being 1 pawn up. So I went from being 2 pawns up and only -2, and now only being 1 pawn up. But just seeing how great the position is now for black, because my opponent didn't see this rook d8, knight d8 idea. This is now becoming quite nice. Sorry, one sec. So yeah, just pushing my pawns. Push. He checks me. Bring my king up, and at this point, I started seeing some stuff, and it's not that I was seeing ghosts. There are some actual real threats in this position, and white has some really nasty tactics, and you do have to be careful. But I calculated all the tactics correctly, and the tactics and the calculation again weren't the issue. It was a sort of understanding of how I'm meant to actually my win condition of the game, because I can avoid all the tactics all I want in this game, but if I don't actually win it, then what's the point of avoiding these tactics? And the move that he came up with was knight d4, and this move annoyed me because I just want to be moving my king up, and this knight move is actually preventing my king from moving up. Or is it? Which is the issue. And what I didn't see is that I calculated king e5, this is fine, but then I thought, oh, he'll just go back and we'll have to repeat, and then I've not made any progress and we're back in the same position. My misunderstanding is that now, because the knight is no longer on d4, it has misplaced itself back here. Also, why the bishop's quite nice defending this pawn on the bottom of the chain. So now my king can come this way, and this king coming into this position is eventually just going to be lights out for white, and there's nothing white can do. But because I was scared of this idea, I then went for king f6 instead, because I didn't see the idea that my king could approach. This is still winning for black. As I've said many times in this tournament, I'm still winning, but we're going to see what happens next. And my opponent plays rook h6. Now, this move you have to be really careful of, and perhaps pause the video and come up with the best move for black here, because white is actually has a really nasty tactic in this position that you need to be careful of. Okay, so the threat is that so your king has to move. So what can you play? If you decide to play, I'm trying to come up with If you do, okay, the most natural move perhaps, King G5, just pushing the king in the same way that we wanted to before and invading this position. Now the problem with this is that there's actually a really nasty tactic, and the rook can take the bishop, and this is starting. It's actually now better for white, and the best move here for black is the disgusting engine move, rook h8, and the computer argues that the pawns will be enough. But if you try and take the knight back, notice how this is a fork, and now you're just up a full knight, and this knight can go back in time to defend against these pawns. So that's not a problem. The knight could even come this way and just start queening their own pawns as well, would probably be the better idea. So you can't play this. So what can you play? So there's two choices. Either you have to defend the bishop, or you have to defend the rook. Because if we imagine that the rook was defending that position, when the knight comes to check, at least I can then defend against that. Sorry, one second, just trying to remember this game. So the best way to play this is actually just go back to f5, and again this was my misunderstanding with this knight x6 idea, is that I could then go to f5 and then this wouldn't be a problem because I can come up. So twice this position has sort of annoyed me, and I brought my king back. I also calculated that knight e6 doesn't work because I can just take the pawn, take the rook, and then if he takes mine, then these pawns are pushing, and again this is winning, as this wasn't something to be scared of. But I'm moving my king backwards, I'm not moving my king forwards, and my opponent, now credit to him, actually starts finding some really accurate and annoying moves. He goes after my pawns. I then move my rook to the file, he takes the pawn, I take with check, he moves the king, I check him, he moves the king, I check him again, he moves the king, and now we're going to start seeing another problem with this king being near the corner. It's actually under more threats than it was before, and this knight threat that it was trying to deal with before, not much of an issue when you might actually be getting checkmated here. And I move, perhaps probably the final blow is moving my king to the side. My idea is that I want to bring my king up this way. I know at this point it's getting quite frustrated. There's only one winning idea in this position. Perhaps if you want to pause the video and try find it and not make the mistake that I did. The idea is that it's f3, and eventually this pawn, I assume, I haven't looked into this too much because I was quite frustrated with the game, but I assume that this pawn's going to queen and there's not much black can do about it. Notice this rook can't come behind because we can just take, and this probably is winning in some form. Yeah, you probably don't even have to push, I'm just playing random moves at this point. You can probably go after these pawns and this is just winning. You can give up this, go after this, and yeah. So that was the only winning idea. Unfortunately for me, I played a horrendous move, and this is now a draw with best play, and with worst play, which might be coming considering how we've been playing so far, actually losing for black. And quite simply, why is my king on the edge of the board when it could have just been in the centre? My king should have been where his king is right now, and this game could have been over, and yet I've allowed him to do what I should be doing. He brings his knight in. Now, notice how these three squares are now covered, and I make the final blunder of the game, play rook g8. I even see what his mistake is, what the mistake is and how to capitalise on it, and annoyingly for me he plays it rook e1, and we can see that this rook is coming. The only way to defend this checkmate is to, there is one way, but you have to give up a lot of material. Oh yeah, it's to play this check and then to bring the knight out. But playing this position is dead lost. He actually thought it might have been a draw after this, but eventually this rook can just sacrifice itself for the bishop, like so, and then his king's faster, and then the game is won for white. So it was back in this position where he played this move. I actually resigned the game, and it is so frustrating. It's not just this game, but I've played 3 or 4 games in this tournament where I've been winning significantly, failed to convert, and then this time I actually got punished for it because I'm actually losing here. And on one hand, if I'm being results based, then obviously it's very upsetting. If I'm being play wise based. I'm happy in my openings. For the middle games, I'm actually quite happy for the most part. It's my end games in the last 3 games and what we're going to see in the next couple of games have just let me down. And yeah, it is what it is. It's a recurring feature, which is good because it shows that I have a focus area to work on. But not great at the time. Yeah, if we're going back, again, notice how his king manages to come in, whereas, like I was saying, my king could have just been doing exactly the same thing ages ago. But yeah, there it is. Thanks for watching. I think there's 2 more games to do from Oxted, and then I've got a couple more tournaments that I want to show you guys. So thanks for watching. Bye.